Hello, everyone, and welcome to Easy English Talks podcast.
Happy to be here.
Today, we're diving into something pretty cool, the art of storytelling.
It's really fascinating.
You might think, isn't that just for, like, entertainment? You know?
Right.
But get this, our deep dive shows that storytelling is like a secret weapon for learning English.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just about telling stories. It's about unlocking a whole new level of communication,
Yeah.
and confidence in English.
Yeah. It's about understanding that storytelling is like woven into how we communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
From just casual conversations to, big speeches where you're trying to persuade somebody.
Right.
And for English learners, it's especially powerful because it really encourages you to actively use the language, right? Playing with vocabulary, grammar, and even pronunciation.
So it's like a sneaky way to improve your English without even realizing you're studying.
Exactly. Now, our notes point out something really important, and that's understanding the why behind your story. It might seem obvious, but even before you say anything in English, it's so important to know what you want to do with your story.
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell somebody something or convince them of something, share an experience, or make them laugh?
So it's like having a mini mission statement for every conversation.
Exactly. And, if you're going to, speak in English, why not be intentional about it? Having a clear purpose helps you choose the right words and structure your thoughts better.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this is super helpful when you're still getting comfortable with English.
Right.
Now, moving on the notes, also talk about knowing your audience.
Okay, so how does that work, especially for English learners?
Well, think about it this way. You wouldn't use the same words and grammar when you're talking to like a little kid
Yeah.
compared to when you're talking to like a coworker about something complicated, right?
Right.
Same with speaking English.
Right.
Think about the person you are talking to. What's their English level? Are they a beginner or more advanced? Changing your language to fit them makes sure you get your message across.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where you can communicate without making it too difficult.
Exactly. And as you get better at English, you'll naturally know how to change your language to fit different situations and people. But at the beginning, it's good to keep this in mind because the point is to connect and to share your thoughts in a way that makes sense to the other person.
Right. Okay, so we've got our why. We've got our audience in mind. Now, the notes bring up this 3-act structure.
Right.
Now, I know we've heard of this in movies and books, but how does it work for everyday storytelling in English?
You can think of it like a plan for making a good story.
Okay.
Act 1 is the setup.
Okay.
You introduce your characters, the setting, and kind of hint at a problem that's coming up.
Yeah.
This makes the listener curious about what's going to happen next.
Okay, so it's like laying the foundation of a house.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You need a strong base before you can build the walls and the roof.
Yeah, okay, what about Act 2? Is that where things get crazy?
Well, not necessarily crazy, but it's where the action happens, things get complicated, and the tension builds up.
Right.
Like imagine a pot of water on the stove slowly getting hotter and hotter.
Okay, I'm hooked. What about Act 3?
That's where the problem is solved. Everything gets tied up, and we learn from what happened.
Oh, okay.
It's like that feeling when you finally finish a puzzle.
I get it.
It gives you a sense of closure.
So even in regular conversations, if we follow this 3-act structure, our stories will be better and people will remember them.
Totally. It makes your story flow naturally and helps the listener follow along. And you don't have to be super strict about it, but having this in mind helps you organize your thoughts and tell a better story, even if it's just a short one about your day.
It's like having a secret trick to make your English conversations more fun.
Precisely. And you can use this structure for any kind of story, from something funny that happened to explaining a tough concept.
All right, so we've got the why, the audience, and the structure. What else makes a story really good?
Characters.
Oh, yeah.
Think about your favorite movies or books. They're full of characters we connect with.
Yeah, it's true. They're the ones we cheer for, laugh with, and sometimes even cry over.
Exactly. Now, to make characters feel real, they have to be more than just, one-sided. They need good and bad qualities, just like people in real life.
Yeah.
They mess up, face problems, and learn from it. Would you be interested in a story about a perfect character who never does anything wrong?
No way. It's their flaws that make them interesting.
Exactly. And for you guys learning English, this is a great chance to learn new words describing people and their personalities. Is a great way to practice using descriptive adjectives. Is someone brave, funny, shy, determined, or maybe a little mischievous?
I like that word.
The more you can bring characters to life with your words, the more interesting your story will be.
So it's like painting a picture with words, adding details to make the character come alive.
Exactly. And when you're learning English, practicing this kind of descriptive language is really important. It helps you express yourself better and create a richer experience for the person listening.
So we've got great characters. What else can we do to make our stories really stand out?
That's where the magic of language comes in.
Okay.
Our notes talk about how important it is to use vivid details and imagery to really take your listener into the heart of your story.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, "It was a cold night," you could say, "The wind howled like a hungry wolf biting through my coat and sending shivers down my spine."
Wow, that second one is so much better. I can almost feel the cold wind.
Right. By using sensory details, you bring in all the senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and you create a real experience for your listener.
Cool.
And for English learners, this is an awesome way to learn new words and try different ways to express yourself.
So it's like leveling up your English skills, adding those little touches that make the picture come to life.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to play around with it.
Yeah.
Try using metaphors, similes, and other figures of speech to paint pictures with your words.
I'm starting to see that storytelling is more than just telling what happened. It's about creating an experience for the listener.
Absolutely. And speaking of experiences, our notes also highlight the importance of emotions in storytelling. Think about the stories that you remember really well. They're probably the ones that made you feel something. Joy, sadness, fear, excitement, maybe even a little bit of everything, you know. Emotions create a connection, a shared experience between the storyteller and the listener.
It's like we're on that emotional roller coaster together.
Exactly. And for English learners, this means that learning words about feelings is super important. Being able to express how you feel and understand how others feel is key for good communication in any language, but especially in English, where a lot of the meaning comes from your tone and how you say things.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about giving information. It's about sharing a piece of yourself, your experiences and your feelings with the listener.
Exactly. And when you do that, you create a connection, a sense of understanding that goes beyond just words, and that's the real power of storytelling.
I love that.
Yeah. That.
Okay, I'm starting to get how all of this works together, but our notes also mention dialogue as a key element of storytelling. How can we use dialogue well to make our stories come to life, especially when we're speaking English?
That's a great question. And dialogue is definitely what makes characters really stand out. Instead of just saying, "She was happy," imagine a dialogue like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. This is the best day ever." You see the difference.
Yeah, it's so much better. The dialogue really makes her happiness feel real.
Exactly. And with dialogue, your listener can step into the shoes of each character, hear their voices, and understand what they're thinking. And for English learners, getting good at dialogue is like unlocking a whole new level of fluency.
Oh, wow.
It makes you think on your feet, use natural expressions, and practice your pronunciation in a way that feels less like studying and more like a real chat.
So even if we're not actors, practicing dialogue can help us sound more natural and comfortable when we're speaking English.
Absolutely. Find a language partner, join a conversation group, or even just practice by yourself in the mirror. The more you can get those English words flowing naturally, the more comfortable you'll become.
That's a really helpful tip. Now, I know we talked about this a bit earlier, but let's go back to the idea of engaging your audience as
Yeah.
we're doing a podcast. How can we make this work for our listeners?
That's a good point. Even though we can't see our listeners or ask them questions directly, we can encourage them to think about the material as we talk about different storytelling techniques.
Okay.
Invite them to think of examples from their own lives, movies they've seen, or books they've read.
So it's like asking them to make their own movie in their head, bringing the ideas to life.
Exactly. And when they're actively thinking about these ideas, they're more likely to remember them and use them when they're telling their own stories in English.
I'm starting to see how storytelling isn't just a fun thing to do. It's a really powerful tool for communication, connection, and even growing as a person.
You gotta. Now let's talk about endings. Our notes say that a strong ending is super important for a story's impact. It's not just about finishing things up.
Right.
It's about leaving your listener with something to remember.
It's like the last note of a song that makes you want to hear it over and over again.
Exactly. A strong ending can tie everything together, really make your point clear, or even leave the listener with a question that they keep thinking about long after the story is over.
Yeah.
Think about a time when a movie or a book left you with a feeling or idea you couldn't get out of your head. That's what a good ending can do.
I see how every part of a story, from the first line to the last word, is important in making it really captivating.
Absolutely.
But how does this all connect back to learning English?
Well, for English learners, getting good at making strong endings is a really useful skill.
Okay.
It makes you think about all the information, find the main point you want to get across, and say it in a way that's clear and powerful.
Yeah.
And those are skills that will help you in any part of your life, whether you're writing an email, giving a presentation, or just having a conversation.
It's like taking all the pieces and putting them together to make a beautiful finished product.
Exactly. And the more you practice this in English, the better you'll get at expressing yourself.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The purpose of our story, the importance of characters, vivid language, emotions, dialogue, engaging our audience, and making a strong ending.
It's a lot to think about.
Is there anything else we should remember as we start telling our own stories in English?
There's one key thing we haven't talked about yet: practice.
Oh, right.
Like any skill, storytelling gets better when you keep working at it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to experiment, make mistakes, and try new things. Find a language partner, join a conversation group, or even just practice telling stories to yourself in the mirror.
Right.
The more you use the language, the more natural and easy it will become.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect. It's about trying and enjoying the process.
Mhm.
Because really, storytelling is about sharing a part of yourself with the world.
Exactly. And don't forget, storytelling can be really helpful in lots of different situations.
Hmm.
The notes also mention using it for persuasion, resolving conflicts, and even in work settings.
That's interesting. Tell me more about how storytelling can be used for persuasion.
Well, think about it. Every time you try to get someone to agree with you, you're basically telling a story. You're making a case, giving evidence, and leading them to your conclusion.
Okay.
Whether you're trying to get a friend to see your point of view or making a business pitch using storytelling can make what you're saying more interesting and persuasive.
So instead of just giving facts and figures, we can make them into a story that grabs the listener's attention and makes them care about what we're talking about.
Exactly. People are more likely to agree with something that connects with them emotionally, and a good story can do that.
I can see how that would be useful at work, especially when giving presentations or trying to share your ideas in meetings. What about resolving conflicts? How can storytelling help with that?
Conflicts often happen because of misunderstandings or different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Storytelling can help fix that by letting people share their experiences and feelings in a safe way.
So it's about creating a space where everyone feels understood and listened to.
Exactly. By listening to each other's stories, we can start to see things from different angles and find something we agree on. This is super important in places where people are from different cultures and have different ways of communicating. Storytelling can be really helpful in building connections and understanding across cultures.
This is all so eye-opening. It's making me realize that storytelling isn't just about entertainment. It's a basic part of how humans communicate and connect. And for English learners, getting good at this can open up a whole world of possibilities.
Wow, it's amazing how much we've learned about storytelling. It's like we keep discovering more and more.
Yeah, it is. And it shows that even though we often think of storytelling as just a fun thing, it's actually a big part of how we understand the world, how we connect with each other, and how we learn.
Hmm. Now, before we finish this deep dive, I want to mention something from the notes that really stood out to me, this idea that even simple stories can be super powerful. Right. Sometimes we think we need big, complicated plots to tell a good story.
Yeah.
But actually, the best stories are often the simple ones, those everyday moments that we can all relate to.
It's like that saying, less is more.
Exactly. A simple story told well can be more powerful than a complex one.
I see.
And for you English learners, this is good news because it means you don't need to know tons of vocabulary or grammar to start sharing your stories. Just focus on being clear, being yourself, and connecting with your listener.
So it's about finding those things that are true for everyone, no matter what language they speak or where they're from.
Exactly. And the more you practice telling these simple stories in English, the better you'll get at expressing yourself and talking to people.
I love that it reminds us that everyone has stories to tell no matter how good their English is, and those stories can connect us, inspire us, and help us understand each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, before we wrap up, I have a question for our listeners to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about a story you could tell in English today. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. Maybe it's something funny, a happy memory, or even just something that made you smile. The important thing is to try out what we've talked about. Use descriptive language, share your emotions, and connect with your listener.
That's a great challenge. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. Every time you tell a story in English, you're getting closer to being fluent and confident.
Well said. This has been another great deep dive into storytelling. It's always fun to explore these things with you.
I agree. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us.
We really appreciate you being here and wanting to learn.
We hope this has inspired you to use the power of storytelling in your journey of learning English.
Keep practicing, keep sharing, and keep those stories coming.
That's it for this episode of Easy English Talks podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, happy storytelling.
And happy English learning.
Follow for more.